Get out of here. 4 words that finally pushed me past my breaking point. My son's fiancée said it loud enough for all 150 wedding guests to hear, pointing at me like I was some vagrant who'd wandered into their Riverside Country Club reception. Jessica Miller, Northwestern law graduate, future corporate lawyer, standing there in her $8,000 Vera Wang dress, banishing me from what was supposed to be our family celebration. I just shrugged, smiled that quiet smile, started walking toward the parking lot like it didn't matter. But I pulled out my iPhone and made one call that would matter more than she could imagine. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let me back up to September 15th, 2024. The day I learned that some people mistake education for intelligence. The day my 3 years of silent generosity met her public arrogance. The day I realized that respect isn't negotiable, even when it costs nearly $500,000. The Riverside Country Club in Lake Forest wasn't my choice. Hell, it wasn't even Kyle's choice, but Jessica wanted somewhere elegant, and what Jessica wanted, Jessica got. $15,000 for the venue alone, another 10 grand for catering. The flowers, 6,000. The photographer, 8,000. I knew every number because I was paying for half of it. I'd driven up in my 2019 Ford F-150, the same truck I'd used to build my electrical contracting business, from nothing. Parked it between a Tesla Model S and a BMW 7 Series. Walked into that marble-floored lobby wearing my best suit, $300 from Men's Warehouse, the same one I'd worn to Kyle's college graduation 4 years ago. The differences were obvious from the start. Jessica's family and friends clustered near the bar, all designer suits and law firm partnerships. Her father, Dr. Miller, ran a private practice in Lincoln Park. Her mother taught at University of Chicago. Her law school classmates worked at Kirkland and Ellis, making $225,000 a year as first-year associates. Then there was my side, my brother Mike, still in his painter's coveralls, because he'd driven straight from a job site. My neighbor Tony, who runs the auto shop on Cicero Avenue, Kyle's high school friends, mostly teachers and social workers and city employees. 2 worlds, 1 wedding. The ceremony went fine. I walked Kyle down the aisle. His mother passed when he was 16, so it was just me. Jessica looked beautiful, I'll give her that. Kyle looked happy. For 30 minutes I thought maybe I'd been wrong about her. Then came the cocktail hour. I was getting a beer when I noticed Mrs. Miller approaching with what looked like a mission. "Frank," she said with that polite smile wealthy people use when they're about to say something unpleasant, "could I speak with you privately?" She guided me toward a quiet corner near the coat check. Dr. Miller joined us, along with Jessica's brother David, who worked at some investment firm downtown. "Frank, we've been thinking," Mrs. Miller began carefully. "This has been such a long day, and we know you probably want to get home early." "Actually, I'm fine," I said. "Wouldn't miss Kyle's reception for anything." The 3 of them exchanged glances. "The thing is, Doctor," Miller said, "the evening portion's going to be quite formal. Dancing, toasts from Jessica's colleagues. You know how these professional gatherings can be." "Not really," I said, "but I'm looking forward to learning." Another exchange of looks. David cleared his throat. "What they're trying to say, Frank, is that maybe you'd be more comfortable heading out after dinner, before the real festivities begin." I stared at him. "Are you asking me to leave my son's wedding?" "Not asking," Mrs. Miller said quickly. "Just suggesting that you might prefer to avoid the later parts. Some of Jessica's law school friends can be quite intense when they start networking." "Networking. You know how lawyers are, Doctor," Miller said with a weak chuckle. "Always talking shop, constitutional law, corporate mergers, Supreme Court decisions. It might be dry for someone in your line of work." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "My line of work?" "Well, yes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a tradesman," Mrs. Miller said. "It's honest work. But tonight is really about Kyle and Jessica's professional future, their career development. And I'm what? A liability to their career development?" David stepped closer. "Look, Frank, let's be honest here. Kyle's moved into a different social circle now. Jessica's got connections at some of the biggest firms in Chicago. Tonight is about building relationships that could define their entire future. And you think I'll hurt those relationships?" "We think, Doctor," Miller said carefully, "that some conversations might be easier without having to explain background differences." I nodded slowly. Background differences. Frank, please don't take this personally, Mrs. Miller said. It's just that Jessica's worked so hard to get where she is. And appearances matter in law. You understand. I understood perfectly. They wanted me gone. Well, I said, I appreciate the suggestion. But I think I'll stay. This is my son's wedding day. The smiles got tighter. Of course, Doctor. Miller said, Your choice. But I could see them regrouping. Throughout dinner, I caught Jessica's mother whispering to other guests, pointing subtly in my direction. I saw Jessica's law school friends studying me from across the room, then leaning in for hushed conversations. During the salad course, I overheard Jessica talking to Dr. Peterson at the next table. Yes, that's Kyle's father. He's very different from our family. Blue-collar background. He works with his hands. Electrical work? Dr. Peterson asked. Something like that. Kyle's really outgrown that environment, thank goodness. We're hoping to help him make a complete transition, away from me. During the main course, Judge Martinez stopped by my table. Frank, right? I'm Maria Martinez. Jessica speaks very highly of you. Does she? Oh, yes. She mentioned you've been very supportive of Kyle's education. There was something in her tone, like she knew more than she was saying. Kyle's a good kid, I said. Deserves every opportunity. Absolutely. And Jessica's quite ambitious. She's got her eye on some very prestigious positions. The kind that require careful attention to image and associations. There it was again, image and associations. After dinner, the dancing started. I sat at my table, nursing a beer, watching Kyle spin Jessica around the dance floor. They looked happy. That's all I wanted. But Jessica kept glancing over at me. Not fondly. More like I was a problem she couldn't solve. Around 9 o'clock, she broke away from the dancing and marched over to my table. Her face was flushed, her jaw set. Frank, we need to talk. Sure. Outside. She led me to the terrace overlooking the golf course. The evening air was cool, crickets chirping in the distance. Frank, I think it's time for you to go. Excuse me. You've seen the ceremony. You've had dinner, you've celebrated with Kyle, but the rest of the evening is really for our peers, our professional colleagues. And I don't belong with your professional colleagues. It's not personal, Frank. It's just, you and I live in different worlds. Kyle's transitioning into my world now, and tonight is important for that transition. I looked back through the glass doors at the reception. Kyle was laughing with some of his college friends. He looked genuinely happy. I want to see my son enjoy his wedding, I said. Jessica's expression hardened. And I want my wedding to go smoothly, without complications. I'm a complication? Frank, please. Just make this easier for everyone. I stayed put. Call it stubbornness. Call it principle. But I wasn't leaving my son's wedding because his new wife was embarrassed by me. Jessica stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back inside. 10 minutes later, she returned with Kyle. Dad, Kyle said uncomfortably, Jessica thinks maybe you might want to head out early. Do you think that? Kyle looked between us, clearly torn. I just want everyone to be happy. I'm happy, I said, right here watching my son's wedding. Jessica's patience snapped. Get out of here. Get out of here. She said it loud enough that conversation stopped around us on the terrace. Through the glass doors, I could see wedding guests turning to look. Dr. Peterson paused mid-conversation. Judge Martinez glanced over from the bar. Jessica, Kyle said quietly, people can hear you. Good, she snapped. Maybe your father will finally get the message. I stayed exactly where I was, hands in my pockets, shoulders relaxed, just looking at her. The message being that you don't belong here. This is supposed to be an elegant affair, and I won't have some uneducated blue-collar worker embarrassing us in front of my colleagues. The words hung in the air like a slap. Kyle's face went white. Jessica, Jesus Christ. No, Kyle. I'm done pretending. Look at him. She gestured at me like I was something she'd found on her shoe. That suit probably cost less than my shoes. He drives a pickup truck to a country club. He doesn't understand the conversations we're having in there. More guests were gathering near the glass doors now, drawn by raised voices. Mrs. Miller appeared, looking mortified. Dr. Peterson stepped onto the terrace. There's nothing wrong with blue-collar work, Jessica continued, her voice getting stronger, more confident. But let's be honest about what it is. It's manual labor. It's not intellectual work. It's not, she searched for the right word. It's not our level. Our level, I repeated quietly. Yes, Kyle and I are professionals now. We move in certain circles. We have reputations to build, careers to protect, and frankly, Frank, you're a liability to that. Dr. Peterson was frowning. Judge Martinez had joined the group, watching through the glass. Even some of Kyle's friends were staring. I see, I said. Do you? Jessica stepped closer, emboldened by what she thought was my submission. Because I don't think you do. I think you believe that because you raised Kyle. You've earned some kind of permanent place in his life. But Kyle's grown beyond his origins now. He's educated, sophisticated. He belongs with people who can match his intellectual level. Kyle found his voice. Jessica, stop. Just stop. Why should I stop? It's the truth. She turned back to me. You know what your problem is, Frank? You think because you helped Kyle through college, you've earned a place at this table. But Kyle earned his place here through intelligence and hard work. She gestured toward the reception where her law school classmates were watching the drama unfold. I went to Northwestern. I passed the Illinois bar on my first try. I have a job at Morrison, Bradley & Walsh, starting Monday, $225,000 a year. Kyle has his social work degree from DePaul. We're building something important here. Her voice was rising, playing to the audience now. But you? You wire houses. You work with your hands. There's nothing shameful about that, but let's not pretend it's the same thing. You don't have the education to understand what we're discussing in there. You don't have the background to contribute to our conversations. I nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. The admission seemed to surprise her. She'd been gearing up for a fight. I am? Oh, yes. I'm just a simple electrician. Very basic work. Nothing intellectual about it. Kyle was staring at me, confused. He knew better. He'd grown up watching me run my business, manage contracts, handle complex commercial electrical systems. But I kept my voice calm, almost agreeable. And you're also right that Kyle deserves to be with educated people, I continued. He's smart, hardworking. He absolutely belongs with professionals. Jessica relaxed slightly. She thought she'd won. I'm glad you finally understand. I do understand. Very clearly. I pulled out my phone. In fact, I understand so well that I think it's time I made some adjustments. What kind of adjustments? Kyle asked nervously. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Richard Steinberg's number, private banker at First National. The kind of banker who takes calls from important clients on Saturday evenings. Practical adjustments, I said, hitting dial. The phone rang twice before Richard answered. Frank? Everything all right? Richard, it's about the McKenna educational loans. I need to invoke the acceleration clause. Jessica's face changed. What loans? I held up one finger. All of them, Richard. The Kyle McKenna account and the Jessica Miller account. Immediate full payment required. Frank, Richard's voice was careful. Are you sure about this? That's a significant amount. How significant? I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Combined principal and accrued interest, approximately $425,000. The terrace went dead silent. Jessica's mouth fell open. That's correct, I said into the phone. Due in full within 30 days, as per the acceleration clause in both promissory notes. Frank, Richard said, I have to ask, are you doing this because of a family dispute? Because there might be better ways to handle... Richard, I'm doing this because the borrowers have made it very clear they don't want my involvement in their lives. They find my background incompatible with their professional aspirations. Jessica was shaking her head frantically. No, no, no. What loans? I don't have any loans. Don't you? I looked at her directly. How exactly did you think your Northwestern Law School tuition got paid? Your living expenses? Your bar exam prep? My parents' federal aid covered about 25%, I said. The rest came from me. $3,400 every month for Kyle's student loans. $4,200 every month for yours. For 37 months. Kyle grabbed my arm. Dad, what are you talking about? The loans I've been paying without telling you. The loans that made it possible for both of you to graduate debt-free. The loans that Jessica just made very clear she doesn't want associated of someone of my background. I spoke back into the phone. Richard, send the acceleration notices Monday morning. Certified mail. Frank, wait, Jessica started. No, I said, hanging up. You were very clear. I'm uneducated. I'm a liability. I don't belong at your level. I straightened my tie and smiled that quiet smile. So now you can handle your own practical decisions. All $425,000 worth. The silence on that terrace stretched like a held breath. Jessica stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. Kyle looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Through the glass doors, I could see wedding guests, straining to hear what was happening. $425,000, Jessica whispered. That's impossible. Is it? I pulled out my phone again, opened my banking app. Would you like to see the payment history? 37 months of transfers to First National Bank. Never missed a payment. Never late. I turned the screen toward her. The transaction history was right there in black and white. September 15th, 2021. Transfer to First National, $7,600. October 15th, 2021. Transfer to First National, $7,600. November 15th, 2021. Transfer to First National, $7,600. Month after month. Kyle's portion and Jessica's portion combined into single monthly transfers. But I thought... Jessica's voice was getting smaller. My federal aid covered most of it. My parents helped with the rest. Your federal aid covered $20,000 per year, I said calmly. Northwestern law costs $82,000 annually. Your parents contributed $15,000. That left $47,000 per year in gaps, plus living expenses, plus books, plus bar exam prep. Kyle was reading over my shoulder, scrolling through the payment history. Dad, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars. $425,112, I said, plus 43 cents, as of today. Dr. Peterson had stepped onto the terrace now, along with Judge Martinez and several other guests. The private family drama was becoming very public very quickly. Frank, Dr. Peterson said carefully, perhaps we should discuss this inside. Privately. Why? I asked. Jessica was very comfortable discussing my background publicly, my education level, my intellectual capabilities. Why should this conversation be any different? Jessica was starting to panic. You can't just demand payment like that. There are laws, consumer protections. Are there? Judge Martinez stepped forward. What kind of loans are we talking about, Frank? Private educational loans, I said. Properly documented promissory notes, filed with the state. Both borrowers signed the agreements when they turned 18. I never signed anything, Kyle said quickly. You did. Remember the financial aid paperwork we filled out together your freshman year? The backup financing applications? You signed. Jessica signed. Both of your signatures are on file. I pulled up another screen on my phone. Richard Steinberg at First National can verify everything. He's been handling the paperwork for 3 years. But the terms, Jessica said desperately. What are the terms? The interest rates? Very generous, actually. 0% interest for the first 3 years, as long as payments were made on time. Which they were. By me. And now? Now the promotional rate period has ended. Standard interest applies. 7.5%, compounding monthly, plus the acceleration clause. Judge Martinez frowned. Acceleration clause? Standard provision. If the borrower defaults, or if the lender chooses to call in the loan, full payment becomes due within 30 days. That's legal? Kyle asked. Perfectly legal, Judge Martinez confirmed, as long as it was disclosed in the original agreement. It was, I said. Page 3, Section 7, subsection B. Both of you initialed that page. Jessica sat down heavily on a nearby bench. This is insane. You're destroying our lives over a wedding disagreement. Am I? I looked around at the gathered crowd. Let me ask everyone here, what exactly did I do wrong tonight? Dr. Peterson spoke up. From what I witnessed, you were trying to attend your son's wedding reception. That seems reasonable. And what did Jessica do? I asked. Uncomfortable silence. She called you uneducated, Mrs. Anderson said quietly. She said you didn't belong here. She said you were embarrassing them, added Tony's wife, who'd driven up for the ceremony. In front of their professional colleagues, Judge Martinez added. I nodded. So let me understand this correctly. I quietly paid for both of their educations for 3 years. I covered half the cost of this wedding. I asked for nothing except basic respect. And when I didn't get it, when I was publicly humiliated and told to leave, I'm the bad guy for stopping the payments. But Dad, Kyle said, we had no idea you were paying anything. Because I didn't want you to worry about money while you were in school. I wanted you to focus on your studies, your careers, your futures. I gestured toward Jessica. But your wife just made it very clear that my support comes with too high a social cost, that my background is incompatible with your professional aspirations. I didn't mean, you meant exactly what you said, I interrupted, and I respect that honesty. So now I'm being honest too. I put my phone away and straightened my jacket. The acceleration notices will arrive Monday morning, 30 days to pay in full. After that, we'll let the lawyers handle collections. I started walking toward the parking lot. Where are you going? Kyle called after me. Home, I said without turning around. I think I've embarrassed you enough for one evening. I made it to my truck before the shaking started. Not anger, not yet. Just adrenaline from doing something I'd never imagined I'd have to do. 3 years of quiet sacrifice ended with a single phone call. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking back at the country club. Through the windows, I could see the reception continuing. Some guests were dancing, others clustered in small groups, probably discussing what they'd just witnessed. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. I drove home slowly, taking Lakeshore Drive instead of the highway. I needed time to think, time to process what I'd just done. My house in Elmhurst felt different when I walked in, quieter. The kitchen table where Kyle had done his homework for 10 years looked smaller somehow. The refrigerator, covered with his graduation photos and achievement certificates, seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. I opened my laptop and logged into First National's business banking portal. The educational loan accounts were right there under active loans, both of them. Kyle McKenna, student educational loan, original principal, $140,000. Current balance, $193,847.22. Jessica Miller, student educational loan, original principal, $205,000. Current balance, $231,264.78. The numbers were higher than I'd quoted because of accrued interest over 3 years. The promotional 0% rate had been a gift. Market rate would have been much higher. I clicked through the payment history. 37 monthly payments, never late, never missed. $3,400 for Kyle, $4,200 for Jessica. But that wasn't the complete picture. I opened a separate folder on my desktop labeled K&J Education. 3 years of additional expenses, all documented. Kyle's LSAT prep course, $1,500. Jessica's LSAT prep course, $1,500. Kyle's laptop for senior year, $1,800. Jessica's laptop for law school, $3,200. Books and materials, Kyle. $6,000, 4 years, books and materials. Jessica, $12,000, 3 years. Kyle's study abroad, semester, $18,000. Jessica's bar exam prep course, $15,000 bar exam application fees, $1,200. Professional interview clothes, Kyle, $800. Professional interview clothes, Jessica, $2,500. I kept scrolling. Car insurance payments when Jessica couldn't afford them. The security deposit on Kyle's first apartment. Emergency dental work when neither of them had insurance. Every expense documented. Every receipt saved. Not because I was planning this moment, but because that's how you run a business. You track every dollar. My phone rang. Kyle. Dad, please, come back. Jessica's having a panic attack. Is she? She can't breathe. She's talking about dropping out of the bar exam. She says her career is over. Her career? The job at Morrison, Bradley, and Walsh. They do background checks. If she has outstanding debt and collections, they might rescind the offer. I hadn't thought of that. Corporate law firms were particular about their associates' financial stability. A major debt default could indeed cost her the job. Kyle, let me ask you something. Did you know I was paying your student loans? No, I thought federal aid covered everything. Did you ever wonder how that was possible? How you graduated debt-free when most of your classmates owe six figures. Silence. Did you ever ask where the money came from? I assumed you'd save for my education, like a college fund. On an electrician's salary? More silence. Kyle, your mother and I never had a college fund. We were too busy paying the mortgage and keeping food on the table. Everything I gave you came from current income, from working 70-hour weeks and taking every overtime shift I could get. I could hear voices in the background, Jessica crying, her mother trying to calm her down, wedding guests asking what was happening. Kyle, I said, your wife just learned a very expensive lesson about respect. The question is, what did you learn? Dad, I'm sorry. I should have known. You should have asked it. When someone hands you a $60,000 education with no questions asked, you should wonder where that money came from. I could hear voices in the background, Jessica crying, her mother trying to calm her down, wedding guests asking what was happening. What do you want from us? Kyle asked. I want you to understand what just happened tonight. Your wife didn't just insult me. She insulted the man who made her career possible. I pulled up my business tax returns from the last 3 years. McKenna Electrical had done well, but not that well. Paying for 2 college educations had required sacrifices. Kyle, do you know why I drive a 6-year-old truck? Because you like trucks? Because I couldn't afford a new one. Do you know why I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years? Why I still live in the same house I bought when you were 12? Dad? Because every extra dollar went to your education, and hers. I postponed replacing my HVAC system for 2 years to cover Jessica's bar exam prep. I'm still using the same kitchen appliances I bought in 2018 because law school tuition came first. The background noise was getting louder. I could hear Dr. Miller asking questions, Jessica's friends offering advice. The thing is, I continued, I never resented those sacrifices. I made them gladly, because I thought I was investing in family, in people who would remember where their opportunities came from. We do remember. Do you? Because tonight Jessica made it very clear that my contributions aren't welcome, that I'm an embarrassment, that my background is incompatible with your new life. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen window. Kyle had played in this backyard for 16 years. I'd taught him to throw a baseball on that grass, helped him build a treehouse in the oak tree by the fence. Kyle, I want you to think very carefully about something. When Jessica called me uneducated, when she said I didn't belong at your wedding, where were you? I was trying to keep the peace. You were choosing sides, and you chose hers. That's exactly what happened. Your wife publicly humiliated the man who paid for her education, and you stood there and let it happen. The line went quiet, except for the background chaos. So, here's what's going to happen, I said. The debt stands. $425,000, due in 30 days. If Jessica wants to negotiate new terms, she can call Richard Steinberg on Monday morning. And if she doesn't, then she'll learn that choices have consequences. And so will you. I hung up and turned off my phone. Some lessons are worth exactly what they cost. Kyle showed up at my house Sunday morning at 8 a.m. I was drinking coffee on the back porch, watching the sunrise through the oak tree where I'd hung his tire swing 20 years ago. He looked like he hadn't slept, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, now wrinkled and stained with what looked like tears or champagne. Maybe both. Dad, we need to talk. We're talking. He sat down on the porch steps, same spot where we'd had the conversation about his mother's cancer diagnosis 12 years ago. Some conversations require familiar ground. Jessica didn't sleep last night. She's been calling lawyers, trying to figure out her options. And what did she learn? That you're right. The debt is legitimate. The promissory notes are valid. She doesn't have strong legal recourse for challenging the contracts. Kyle rubbed his face with both hands. Dad, why didn't you tell me? About the payments, the sacrifices, all of it? Would it have changed anything? Of course it would have. Of course it... Would it? Or would you have felt guilty about accepting help? Would Jessica have felt indebted, obligated? I didn't want that. I wanted you both to succeed on your own merits. A cardinal landed on the fence, bright red against the morning sky. Kyle's mother used to say cardinals were messages from heaven. Good luck coming your way. She wants to apologize, Kyle said. Does she? Yes, she knows she was wrong. The stress of the wedding, the pressure from her family to make a good impression. It all got to her. Kyle, let me tell you what I heard last night. I heard your wife say I was uneducated. I heard her say I didn't belong with her colleagues. I heard her say my background was incompatible with your professional future. I set down my coffee cup. Those weren't stress-induced mistakes. Those were her actual thoughts, finally spoken out loud. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. Do they? Or do they say things they've been thinking all along? Kyle was quiet for a moment, watching the cardinal hop along the fence. What do you want from us, Dad? Really? I want the truth. From both of you. What truth? I want Jessica to admit that she's been embarrassed by me from the beginning. That she spent 3 years hoping I'd fade into the background of your lives. That last night wasn't an aberration. It was her finally saying what she's always felt. Kyle flinched. That's not... And I want you to admit that you let it happen. That somewhere along the way you started seeing me through her eyes. The blue-collar father who didn't quite fit in your new world. Dad, that's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you invited me to one of your work events? When was the last time Jessica suggested we all have dinner together? When was the last time she asked about my business, my life, anything that mattered to me? Kyle couldn't answer. The truth is, son, I became an inconvenience to your upward mobility, a reminder of origins you'd rather forget. I stood up, walked to the porch railing, and you know what? I could have lived with that. People grow, they change, they move into different social circles. It happens. Then why? Because I was still quietly supporting that growth, still paying the bills that made it possible. And when push came to shove, when Jessica had to choose between basic respect and social embarrassment, she chose embarrassment. A text message chimed on Kyle's phone. He glanced at it, frowned. What is it? Jessica. The local news wants to interview her about the wedding incident. Someone posted video on social media. Video? From last night. The confrontation on the terrace. It's going viral. I felt a cold satisfaction. What's the caption? Kyle read from his phone. Entitled bride tells father-in-law to get out of wedding after he pays for her law school. 300,000 views so far. Huh. Dad, this could destroy her career before it starts. Law firms don't hire people who create public scandals. Then she should have thought of that before creating a public scandal. Kyle stood up, paced across the porch. There has to be a way to fix this. There is. What? Jessica can publicly apologize for her behavior, acknowledge that I've supported both of your educations, thank me for my sacrifices instead of calling them embarrassing. And then we'll discuss new payment terms. Maybe a manageable monthly amount instead of the lump sum. Kyle's phone rang. Jessica. Answer it, I said. Let her know what we discussed. Kyle took the call. I could hear Jessica's voice through the speaker, high and panicked. Legal consultations, media requests, job offer potentially in jeopardy. What did your father say? Jessica asked. Kyle looked at me. He wants a public apology, an acknowledgement of what he's done for us. I can't do that. It would be admitting I was wrong. You were wrong, Kyle said quietly. Silence on the phone. Jessica, he paid for our educations, both of them, and we treated him like garbage. Kyle? No, Dad's right. We forgot where we came from, and now we're going to pay for it. He hung up. So what happens now? I asked it. Now we see if Jessica's pride is worth $425,000. By Monday morning, Jessica's counterattack was in full swing. I was reading the Tribune when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed bulls, Facebook mentions. Something was happening. The first message came from Tony's wife. Frank, what the hell is this? Attached was a screenshot of a Facebook post with 412 shares. Jessica Miller's public statement posted at 6:47 a.m. After much reflection on Saturday's events, I need to address the false narrative circulating online. My father-in-law's claims about supporting our education are misleading. What he calls gifts were actually personal loans that we never specifically requested. When I stood up for myself against inappropriate behavior, he demanded immediate repayment of money we had no idea we owed. This feels like financial manipulation, and I won't be silenced by intimidation. Financial manipulation. Hashtag toxic. Family. Hashtag standing up. The comments were already pouring in. Sue him. This is financial coercion. Retry P. Continue edit. Sue him. This is financial coercion. You're so brave for speaking out. Family loans shouldn't come with strings attached. But Jessica had made a crucial mistake. She'd tagged several wedding guests in the post, including Judge Martinez and Dr. Peterson, people who'd witnessed the actual confrontation. My phone rang. Richard Steinberg. Frank, have you seen the Facebook post? Just read it. This actually helps our position. She's publicly acknowledging the financial relationship and the debt. Makes it harder to dispute the contract terms later. What do you mean? She's claiming the loans were manipulative, but I have all the original documentation. 0% interest for 3 years. No origination fees, no penalties for early payment. These are extraordinarily generous terms by any standard. Richard paused. But Frank, there's something else. My daughter graduated from Northwestern Law 3 years ago. She sent me a screenshot from a private legal professionals group. What kind of screenshot? Jessica posted in the Chicago Legal Community Facebook group asking for referrals to attorneys who handle family financial disputes. She's looking to challenge the contracts. I wasn't surprised. What's the response been? Mixed. Some sympathy, but also some tough questions. Lawyers understand contract law. They're asking to see the loan documents, the interest rates, the terms. And Jessica isn't providing specifics. Just emotional appeals about manipulation and intimidation. By noon, the story had spread beyond Facebook. WGN Radio picked it up for their local interest segment. Wedding drama turns into family debt dispute, was the headline. The radio interview was brief, but damaging. Jessica painted herself as a victim of an elaborate financial control scheme. He waited until my wedding day to spring this on me, she told the host. It was calculated, deliberate. He wanted maximum emotional impact when I was most vulnerable. And you had no idea about these loans? None. I thought my education was being paid through normal channels, financial aid, family contributions. I never consented to being indebted to someone who could use it against me later. But the radio host asked the obvious question. If you didn't want his financial support, why didn't you refuse it? Jessica's answer revealed everything. I didn't know it was coming from him specifically. And even if I had, I was a struggling student. I couldn't afford to turn down help. Translation. She was happy to take the money, just not to show gratitude for it. The tide started turning around 2 p.m. when Judge Martinez posted her own Facebook comment. I was present at the wedding in question. Miss Miller's characterization of events doesn't match what I witnessed. Her father-in-law was respectful throughout the evening until she publicly called him uneducated and told him he didn't belong there. People who provide zero-interest educational loans for 3 years aren't typically trying to manipulate anyone. Dr. Peterson added her own comment an hour later. I heard the conversation. Jessica's description of her father-in-law as an embarrassment was unprovoked and cruel. This wasn't about financial control. It was about basic respect. Then Sarah Williams from the law firm posted the comment that changed everything. Jessica, I strongly advise you to delete these posts and handle this privately. Public disputes about family financial matters rarely end well for anyone, especially lawyers. This could affect your bar admission and employment prospects. Too late. By 4 p.m., the Chicago Tribune had picked up the story. Suburban Wedding Dispute Highlights Family Financial Boundaries ran online with quotes from both the radio interview and various Facebook posts. The Tribune article included details Jessica probably wished she'd kept private. Her starting salary, at Morrison, Bradley, and Walsh, $225,000. The cost of Northwestern Law School, $82,000 per year. The gap between what most students owe and what she claimed she owed. The math didn't work in her favor. Morrison, Bradley, and Walsh called Jessica at 5:30 p.m. I know because Kyle called me immediately afterward. Dad, they're reconsidering her job offer. Are they? The managing partner saw the Tribune article. They don't want associates who create public controversies before they even start work. Understandable. And there's something else. The Illinois Bar Association is asking questions about her fitness for admission. Questions? About the social media posts. About making potentially misleading statements regarding contractual obligations. Jessica's attempt to control the narrative had backfired spectacularly. Instead of garnering sympathy, she'd created doubts about her judgment and professionalism. What does she want to do now? I asked. She wants to meet, face to face, to discuss terms. When? Tonight. I looked at the clock. 6:15 p.m., Monday night, 2 days after the wedding that never finished. Tell her to come by at 8. And Kyle, tell her to bring her checkbook. I spent the 2 hours before Jessica's arrival organizing 3 years of financial records. Every bank statement, every canceled check, every receipt. The complete paper trail of my investment in 2 ungrateful students. I spread everything across my dining room table like evidence at a trial. Because that's essentially what this was going to be. The original promissory notes came first. Kyle's signature from September 2021, when he was starting his senior year at DePaul. Jessica's from the same month, beginning her first year at Northwestern Law. Both signatures clear, both documents properly notarized. Next came the payment schedules. 37 monthly transfers, never missed, never late. $3,400 for Kyle, $4,200 for Jessica. The bank statements showed exactly when each payment cleared, exactly which account it came from. But the real story was in the supplementary expenses. I'd kept receipts for everything. Kyle's LSAT prep course receipt, $1,500 paid by check from my business account. Jessica's bar exam prep materials, $15,000 charged to my personal credit card. The laptop Jessica needed for law school, $3,200. Best Buy receipt dated August 15th, 2021. Books and supplies, hundreds of smaller receipts, Amazon orders, campus bookstore purchases. I documented everything without really thinking about it. Just good business practice. Track every expense, keep every receipt. 25 years of running McKenna Electrical had taught me that money without documentation might as well be money that never existed. The wedding expenses were in a separate folder. The venue contract showing my 50% responsibility, $7,500. Catering charges split between families, $5,000. Photography package, $4,000. Even the flowers I'd insisted on upgrading, an extra $1,200. My phone rang at 7:45. Kyle. Dad, we're in your driveway. Jessica's nervous. She should be. Please, just hear her out. They knocked at 8 p.m. exactly. Kyle looked exhausted. Jessica looked like she'd been crying for 2 days straight. Her eyes were red, her usually perfect makeup was minimal, and she was wearing jeans and a Northwestern Law sweatshirt instead of her typical business attire. Frank, she said quietly, thank you for seeing us. I gestured toward the dining room. Have a seat. Jessica stopped short when she saw the table. Documents covered every inch of surface space, organized into neat piles with post-it note labels. Tuition payments, living expenses, supplementary costs, wedding expenses, legal documentation. Jesus, she whispered. 3 years, 1 month, and 12 days of financial support, I said. Every penny documented. Kyle picked up one of the bank statements. Dad, this is incredibly detailed. I run a business. Documentation matters. Jessica sat down heavily, staring at the evidence spread before her. I didn't know about most of this. Which part didn't you know about? The scale of it. I thought maybe you'd helped with some tuition payments. I didn't realize. She gestured helplessly at the table. You didn't realize what? That you'd basically paid for my entire legal education? I pulled out a calculator and a yellow legal pad. Let's go through it together. Northwestern Law tuition, 2021 to 2024, $82,000 per year, times 3 years equals $246,000. I wrote the number on the pad. Your federal aid package, $20,000 per year, times 3 years equals $60,000. Another number. Your parents' contribution, $15,000 per year, times 3 years equals $45,000. I showed her the math. $246,000 minus $60,000 minus $45,000 equals $141,000 shortfall. That's what I covered in tuition alone. Jessica was staring at the numbers. But then there were living expenses. Rent, food, transportation, books, supplies. About $25,000 per year for 3 years. Another $75,000. I kept writing. Plus the bar exam prep course, $15,000. Plus application fees, $1,200. Plus the laptop, $3,200, plus interview clothes, $2,500. The total was growing on the yellow pad. Kyle's education was less expensive, but still substantial. State school tuition, $35,000 per year for 4 years. His federal aid covered about half. The rest came from me. I turned the pad around so they could see the final calculation. Total educational investment, $320,500. Add 3 years of accrued interest at market rates, $58,200. Add wedding expenses, $46,400. I circled the bottom line, $425,100. That's what your legal education actually cost, Jessica. And that's what you called an embarrassment on Saturday night. Jessica was crying now, but quietly. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was this much. But you knew I was helping. I knew Kyle's father was supportive. I didn't know the extent. And when you found out Saturday night, what was your reaction? Gratitude? Appreciation? She couldn't answer. Your reaction was to call me uneducated, to say I didn't belong with your colleagues, to tell me to get out of your wedding. Kyle reached across the table and took her hand. Jessica, tell him. Tell me what? Jessica looked up, tears streaming down her face. Tell you that I'm sorry. That I was wrong. That I've been wrong about you from the beginning. Go on. Tell you that I was embarrassed by your background because I was insecure about mine. That I thought if I could distance myself from anything blue-collar, I'd seem more professional, more legitimate. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Tell you that the man I called uneducated is actually the smartest person I know, because he figured out how to turn his work into wealth while I was still trying to impress people with my degree. I folded my hands and waited. What do you want from me, Frank? I want you to understand what respect looks like and what it costs when you don't show it. 2 weeks later, Jessica tried again. She'd convinced Kyle to attempt a second wedding ceremony. A fresh start, she called it. Smaller, simpler, more intimate. St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in Elmhurst instead of the country club. 50 guests instead of 150. Cake and coffee in the basement instead of a full reception. I wasn't invited, but I'd heard about it anyway. Elmhurst is a small town, and word travels fast when someone tries to get married twice in 2 weeks. I loaded my truck with the same banker's box I'd prepared for our kitchen table meeting. Every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence of my 3-year investment in their futures. If Jessica wanted a fresh start, she was going to get one. Complete with full disclosure. I parked across from the church at 2:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the ceremony, carried the box to the front steps and sat down to wait. The early arrivals started showing up around 2:45. I recognized most of them. Kyle's college friends looking confused about why there was a second wedding. Mrs. Anderson from the school district, probably wondering why the father of the groom was sitting on the church steps instead of inside. Dr. Miller and his wife arrived at 2:50, saw me, and stopped dead in their tracks. Frank, Dr. Miller said carefully, what are you doing here? Waiting for the right moment, I said. For what? For the truth to come out. Mrs. Miller looked nervous. Perhaps you should go home. This is difficult enough for Jessica without complications. I'm not the complication, I said. I'm the solution. More guests arrived. Tony and his wife from the neighborhood, a few of Kyle's work colleagues, Jessica's law school friends looking uncomfortable when they saw me. Dr. Peterson appeared at 2:55, walking up the church steps. She paused when she saw me. Frank, are you planning to attend the ceremony? Depends on whether anyone asks the right questions. What questions? I gestured toward the banker's box. Questions about who paid for the bride's education. Questions about why there's a second wedding. Questions about what happened 2 weeks ago. Dr. Peterson frowned. What happened 2 weeks ago? You were there. You tell me, she thought for a moment. Jessica called you uneducated. Told you to leave. You made a phone call about loans. And you're here because she never properly apologized. Publicly, I said. She apologized privately, in my kitchen, with tears and promises, but the insult was public. The apology should be, too. Kyle appeared at the church entrance at exactly 3 p.m. He looked like he'd lost more weight. The stress was eating him alive. Dad, he said, quietly, you can't be here. Why not? Because Jessica will lose her mind if she sees you. She's barely holding it together as it is. Is she? I opened the banker's box and pulled out a manila folder. Maybe she should see this first. Kyle looked at the folder warily. What is it? The contract dispute she's trying to build? Her lawyer thinks they can challenge the loan terms based on undue influence and inadequate disclosure. Kyle's face went white. She what? She's consulting with Patricia Collins about disputing the debt. Claims I deliberately hid the true nature of the financial arrangement. But that's not true. Is it? Yesterday morning, her lawyer sent me a letter questioning whether you both fully understood what you were signing. I pulled out the legal correspondence. Want to read her attorney's position? Kyle took the papers, his hands shaking slightly. As he read, his expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and disgust. This says you deliberately took advantage of young adults who trusted family guidance without understanding the long-term implications. Interesting argument, considering both of you were adults when you signed, and Jessica was already in law school. It says you failed to provide adequate, independent legal counsel for the contracts. Standard family loan agreements, all terms clearly disclosed in writing. Both of you had weeks to review before signing. Kyle sat down on the steps beside me. She's really going to fight this. She's going to try, I said. But that's not why I'm here. Then why? Because your wedding guests deserve to know who they're celebrating. The church doors opened. Jessica appeared in a simple white dress, nothing like the Vera Wang gown from 2 weeks ago. She saw us sitting on the steps and her face went rigid. Kyle, get away from him, now. Jessica, we need to talk about the legal challenge. We need to get married. That's what we need to do. She marched down the steps. Come on. Not yet, I said, standing up. First, let's discuss your attorney's letter. Wedding guests were starting to gather around us, drawn by raised voices. Mrs. Anderson, Dr. Peterson, several of Kyle's friends. I'm not discussing anything with you, Jessica said. My lawyer advised me not to speak to you directly. Did your lawyer also advise you to challenge contracts you voluntarily signed? More people were coming outside now. Judge Martinez, who'd apparently been invited to this wedding too. Sarah Williams from the law firm. Even some neighbors who'd heard the commotion. This is harassment, Jessica said, but her voice was shaking. No, said Judge Martinez, walking down the steps. This is a public discussion about public contract disputes. She'd obviously been following the case. I've heard about your legal challenge, Jessica. Your position seems inconsistent with what I witnessed 2 weeks ago. I opened the banker's box and started pulling out documents. Bank statements first, then loan agreements, then payment schedules. Since Jessica has chosen to challenge these contracts publicly, I announced to the growing crowd, I thought everyone should see the actual evidence. I spread the papers on the church steps like a legal exhibit. 3 years and 1 month of educational support. Every payment documented. Every expense tracked. Mrs. Anderson picked up a bank statement. Frank, these are enormous payments. $3,400 per month for Kyle. $4,200 per month for Jessica. 37 payments each, never missed, never late. Gasps from the crowd. Someone whispered, "Holy shit," under their breath. Total educational investment, $320,500, plus wedding expenses, $46,400, plus interest and additional costs. I looked directly at Jessica. Grand total, $425,100. All of it documented, all of it voluntary, all of it provided without asking for anything except basic respect. Patricia Collins, Jessica's lawyer, pushed through the crowd. Mr. McKenna, you need to stop this public display immediately. Miss? Collins, perfect timing. I wanted to ask you about your client's contract challenge. I pulled out the legal correspondence and handed it to Dr. Peterson. Your client claims she didn't understand the implications of the loan agreements. Is that your position? My client was a young student who trusted family guidance, a law student who signed clearly written contracts with all terms disclosed. The relationship created inherent pressure. What pressure? I turned to Judge Martinez. Your Honor, you've seen the documents. Do these contracts appear coercive? Judge Martinez looked at the papers spread across the church steps. These are standard family loan agreements with extraordinarily generous terms. 0 interest for 3 years, flexible payment schedules, no penalties. That's not the point, Collins started. Actually, it's exactly the point, Judge Martinez interrupted. Your client accepted over $200,000 in educational support, then publicly humiliated the man who provided it. And now she's claiming she didn't understand basic contract terms despite being in law school? The crowd was getting bigger. Cars were slowing down on Prospect Avenue. People were taking cell phone videos. Kyle stood up slowly. Jessica, we need to drop this legal challenge. No, he's trying to destroy us. No, Kyle said, looking at the evidence spread across the church steps. We're destroying ourselves. He turned to face the crowd of 50 wedding guests. My father paid for both of our educations. For 3 years. He never asked for credit, never asked for gratitude. He just wanted to help us succeed. His voice was getting stronger. And 2 weeks ago, at our first wedding attempt, Jessica called him an embarrassment. In front of everyone. Because he's an electrician instead of a lawyer. Jessica was crying now, but Kyle wasn't stopping. Now she's trying to challenge legally binding contracts because she doesn't want to pay back money she desperately needed and freely accepted. She's questioning the integrity of a man who sacrificed his own financial security to give us opportunities we never could have afforded. He walked over to me, held out his hand. Dad, I'm sorry. For not defending you 2 weeks ago. For letting her pursue this frivolous legal challenge. For forgetting who raised me and what you taught me about honor. I shook his hand. Apology accepted. I looked at Jessica, but not from her. Not until she drops the legal challenge, apologizes publicly for disrespecting me, and acknowledges what I actually did for both of you. I can't. Then you can explain to the Illinois Bar Association why your first professional action involves challenging generous family loan agreements. I packed up my documents, closed the banker's box. Your choice, Jessica. Truth or consequences. I walked back to my truck, leaving 50 wedding guests standing on the church steps with a bride who'd just learned that some fights aren't worth fighting. The legal challenge was dropped the next morning. The public apology came 2 days later. The second wedding was postponed indefinitely. 6 months later, Jessica Miller works at Cook County Legal Aid making $82,000 a year, not the $225,000 she was promised at Morrison, Bradley, and Walsh. That offer disappeared the morning after her church steps meltdown went viral on TikTok. The video hit 4.2 million views. Bride challenges father-in-law for paying her law school was the caption that launched 1,000 comments. None of them kind. Imagine being this ungrateful. This is why student debt exists. Entitled people who think education is free. That man is a saint. She's a sociopath. The Illinois Bar Association opened an inquiry into her professional judgment. The case was eventually closed with a formal counseling, but the damage was done. Big law firms don't hire associates with viral public disputes. Jessica and Kyle are making payments on the restructured loan now. $2,100 per month for the next 16 years. Richard Steinberg was surprisingly generous with the new terms. 5.5% interest, extended schedule, no early payment penalties. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Oak Park. The dream house in Lake Forest never happened. That $60,000 down payment went straight to loan reduction. Kyle visits every other Sunday for dinner, just him. We don't discuss Jessica much, but he's told me she's changed. Humbled, he says. Working with legal aid clients has taught her about real problems, real struggles. I believe that. Having your career prospects destroyed by viral video will humble anyone. My business is thriving. McKenna Electrical has more commercial contracts than I can handle. Word spread about the man who stood up to entitled ingratitude. Working class clients respect that. I've hired 5 new electricians and bought 4 additional trucks. The retirement account I depleted is growing again. Faster now than before. Last month, Kyle asked if I'd consider reducing the monthly payments. Jessica's pregnant, he said. A baby changes everything. I smiled. Congratulations. Your mother would have been thrilled to be a grandmother. So, will you consider it? Kyle, when that baby is born, you'll understand something new about sacrifice. About providing for people you love without expecting anything in return. I refilled his coffee cup. When you understand that, really understand it, we'll talk about the payments. Some lessons